You're listening to the Travis Makes Money podcast. Hey, what's going on, money makers? Welcome back to the Travis Makes Money podcast, where it is our mission to help you make more money. Today on the show, we're going to be talking about how to manage your finances with my new friend, Chad Hufford. Chad is a Dave Ramsey endorsed SmartVestor Pro. He owns a boutique financial planning firm, Veritas Wealth Management, that manages about $500 million and serves several hundred families across the United States. So this guy is an expert on all things money, which I'm stoked about and happy to have him on the show. Before we jump into all of that stuff with Chad, if you're tuning in wondering how I build the relationships that I have with the people on this show or on my other podcast, Travis Makes Friends, it has been through the podcast. So if you're already running a 7, 8, or 9-figure business and you want to expand your network while at the same time growing your personal brand, building an audience, creating better social content, sharpening your own expertise, and then even maybe get some sponsorship dollars to do all of that, then head over to travischappell.com/coaching. There's an application there. I'm making a couple of one-on-one podcast coaching clients. So if you're already running a successful business and you want to know what a podcast fits into that, travischappell.com/coaching to fill out that application. We'll jump on a quick chat, see if it might be a good fit to work together. Now, without further ado, Chad Hufford, what's up? Welcome to the show.
Travis, pleasure to be here. Appreciate the opportunity to encourage your audience, help them live more intentionally.
Yes, sir. Let's jump right in, man. Let's start with a softball question here before we dive into the deep stuff. How do you currently make money?
I've got a wealth management firm. That's the majority of our income. We also have some real estate. We have a short-term rental here on the Kenai River and up in Anchorage, Alaska, some of the best salmon fishing in the world.
Ooh.
And they also part owner in a supplement company as well.
Okay, great. So back in time, let's go back in time. What did you do before Veritas? How were you making money before?
I actually went to school to pursue medicine. I have a degree in biochemistry.
Okay.
And there's a fork in the road. It had to do a little bit of a pivot and started doing some personal training. And it was not anything really anticipated doing long term, but it was something I could scale up very quickly. It paid the bills. But for almost the last 20 years, about 18 years, been doing the wealth management, retirement planning, financial planning. And that was the sole pillar of my income for quite a long time. Built that up to a place where I could start diversifying and branching out away from it.
And where did the SmartVestor Ramsey partnership come into play?
About halfway through. So it's been about a decade now, partnered with Dave Ramsey. They have a phenomenal program and process for helping people be more intentional, more about the next 30 days. Our focus is on the next 30 years. And don't get me wrong, I mean, Ramsey, they help people with the long-term stuff and debt repayment and all that. But I mean, the big thing is just having that budget, telling your money where to go at the beginning of the month, so you're not wondering where it went at the end of the month. And we help folks take that next step, planning out that next 30 years. But as we alluded to, or we talked to a little bit before we started recording, help people find that balance too. It isn't
Yeah.
about living on beans and rice for the next 30 years. Like you
Yeah.
can live a little bit now and still pay your future self.
Yeah, that's one thing I've always it's a yin and yang, right? That's one thing I've always tried to keep in mind is that what do we make money for? You know what I mean? It's not for having a good retirement. We make
Right.
money because it's the necessary evil of living a life in the 2000s. Like you have to make money or else you can't buy food. You can't have a roof over your head. But once those things are taken care of, the question becomes like, at what point am I valuing the accumulation of wealth over the investment in experiences and memories with my family and the people that are closest to me? And how do we build a plan that enables me to do both of these things at the same time?
Well, that's one of the reasons I pivoted away from medicine. The cost I was afraid was going to be too high for my family on the front end when my kids were young and impressionable. And as you and I know, we can't get that time back.
Yeah.
And if money ever becomes the objective, and it wasn't for me in medicine, I had a lot of reasons for pursuing that. But if money becomes the target, if money becomes the goal, that should be a huge alarm bell that we are on the wrong path. Because I just believe money is a tool to help create a better life. But so many of us don't know to your point, Travis, many of us don't know. We're not aware of really what is important to us. So we end up chasing what is important to everybody else,
Hmm.
start essentially dancing to somebody else's music, and then we wonder why we're tripping all over ourselves.
Yeah, and it could be good things, right? Like
Exactly.
it could be a college degree. It could be things that you would objectively look at and survey of 100 people, and they would say that's a good thing to spend money on. It's like maybe for those people it's good, but that's the whole point of this whole journey is that it's subjective and personal for everybody. So you have to be willing to sit down and interrogate the potential options to invest into, and ask yourself, does this really matter to me? Or is this just am I just doing this because my parents wanted me to go to college, or because my buddies think that I would be cooler if I drove a BMW instead of a Civic? Like, is it because I'm trying to do things for other people, impress other people, engage in society in a different way? Or is it because this is personally fulfilling to me, because I love cars and just I would love to drive that BMW, because maybe it might be worth putting yourself in a different financial position to have that lease payment on the BMW to write off on your taxes. Like maybe that would be okay for you. Like, you know what I mean? I just the whole like rigid, like black and white rules that everybody has to follow no matter what is where I start getting tired of people giving that type of rigid advice.
Really, I think the question we have to ask ourselves, Travis, are my choices, my behaviors, my habits, are they in line with the future that I want?
Hmm.
And too often, people don't even really ask the second part of that question. We're choosing tools and tactics without a real objective for where we want those tools to lead us, where we want that pathway to lead us. It's almost like jumping in a taxi, or for today's audience, an Uber,
Yeah.
and just being like, I want to go faster. And like, well, where would you like me to take you? I don't care. Let's just go faster. We're so focused, Travis, on trying to increase our rate of speed that we really aren't necessarily aware of where this road or where this pathway is taking us. We might be traveling very efficiently on the wrong road.
Yeah, we're solving for the wrong problem, basically. That was
Hmm.
what I tell people, is that a really bad case scenario for me is basically pursuing something that is what other people want for me, pursuing it with the only way I know how to pursue, which is with 100% of my energy, my focus, my money, and realizing that I'm putting in the work to get to the top of the wrong mountain, but not
Yes.
realizing it until I'm at the top of that mountain and being like, oh, you know what? I actually didn't really care to be on the top of this mountain. I kind of wanted to be on that mountain over there. So if you don't like constantly take stock for where you're headed and regain clarity about where you want to be, then you can end up putting in a bunch of work to accomplish something that you had no interest in accomplishing.
You're exactly right. And I think so many people don't have a clear objective for that. So they just end up pursuing more and more and more. And the problem with financial goals, goals in general, but especially financial goals, is there's never a referee at the goal line, at the end zone to tell you you've made it, you've scored, you're good. So there's a tendency for ambitious, hardworking people like you and I and your listeners. They're more goal focused, they're more driven than the average individual. The goalposts keep moving. And this is why it's so important to have measurable, specific goals around the life that you want. So the first question we need to ask ourselves is, what do I want my life to look like? If I never had to produce a paycheck ever again, what do I want to be doing? And we try to encourage our folks, Travis, to not make not working the goal. Like, not working should not be the objective.
Correct.
Being able to live comfortably without a paycheck, financial independence, that's the goal. But what do you want your life to look like if you didn't have to work in your business or go to your job anymore? That's the first piece. Then we look at, let's attach some financial numbers to that. What amount of income would you need to sustain that type of lifestyle? And there's a finite amount of money that takes. Now, it might take a while to figure that out, but it's a finite amount of money. From that, we can create a meaningful, measurable target for the amount of investments you will need to retire or at least remain financially independent and be there comfortably for a very long time. So once we have that, then we reverse engineer to where that person is today. Now we can start looking at what are the pathways, the tools and tactics to get them to where they want to be in a reasonable timeline. And the beauty of this is multifaceted, but for one reason is it is finite. If we know what your goal is, there's a finite amount. a specific amount of monthly sacrifice you have to make to stay on track. It
Yep.
isn't, I'm trying to save as much money as possible. It isn't, I'm trying to sacrifice everything. It is, I'm putting away a specific amount. And this might be a 20-year goal, but the cool thing about it is you get to celebrate the wins along the way. You're
Mm.
like, you know what? Everybody's going out to dinner. That would be awesome. It's going to be expensive if it's a sweet restaurant, but I've already hit my target for this month. I'm
Yeah.
on track. I can do this and not feel guilty. I can take the vacation. Maybe I can afford a little bit nicer car, to use your example. But
Yep.
it's really hard to balance the present with the future if we don't know what we need to do to build the future that we're desiring.
Absolutely. And I would add to that to say that whatever number you initially come with, increase it. Because it's usually always going to take more money than you think it's going to take in order to be able, because life just has a way of blowing your budget. You think you're doing a good job and you're putting away money and you're like, man, we're making some progress. And then like 7 months into attacking your, whatever, let's just call it emergency savings account. You're building it up, building it up, building it up, and then all of a sudden you have to use it because there's an unexpected medical bill, or you need new brakes, or it's time to swap out the tires on the car, or like something is inevitably going to come up. So I always tell people, like, figure out your number and then tack on an additional like 25%, because it's probably a little bit more realistic in terms of what life is going to throw at you that you have no idea is going to come your way. And it's always better to over prepare a little bit rather than under prepare a little bit. And then on the other side too, I love that you said that thing about going to dinner, because that's again one of those things where people are like, well, you'll never see the inside of a restaurant until you have all this debt paid, whatever. And it's like, okay, what if you're following a plan and you're attacking that debt, and you have friends in town that you haven't seen in 6 years, and they're going to dinner, and there's ways to be able to go enjoy yourself and to hang out with those people and to feed the experiences of your life while also still maintaining your desire for a better future. And that's why we have the show, man, because it's like you can only cut so much before you're just living a life that's just has zero fun. You're not adding to your memory bank. You're not creating cool experiences for you and for your family. So it's like, figure out what those non-negotiables are. Like for us, that's why, like, sacrifice will take sacrifice. There will be sacrifices that you have to make, but at least you can kind of prioritize those sacrifices based on what you want to see happen in your life. So like for us, like, we still drive, used paid off vehicles that have hundreds of thousands of miles on them between the two, because one of the things that we're not going to sacrifice is experiences with our kids. So we want to make sure that we take excess money every year and we take a trip. We go do something fun. We can take them out for dinner every once in a while, or we can go do an activity that we, maybe quote unquote shouldn't be doing based on our budget. But I would rather carve that out so that we can make sure that we do those things, and then we cut out the vehicle expenses, or we cut out going out to eat, or we cut out other things. Like, but you have to be able to prioritize some things that are going to enrich your life in the meantime, as long as you have clarity over the fact that there's a sacrifice that's going to have to be made, but you just need to prioritize which sacrifices you are more okay with making along the way.
Travis, how old are your kids?
5 and 4.
5 and 4. And one thing that I remind myself often is my kids will never be this age. So I have a 4-year-old as well. Our youngest is 4.
Okay.
We've got 6 kids, 16 down to 4.
Wow.
But my 4-year-old will never be 4 again. So some of the things he does is annoying, be frustrating. Like 10 years from now, I would give gobs of money to come back and revisit this and to help him clean up a spill, because he's I hopefully I still have a great relationship with him in 10 years when he's 14, but
Yeah.
he's going to be a teenager. He's never going to be a 4-year-old boy ever again.
Yep.
And just to cherish these moments, and that's another reason why it's so dangerous to treat retirement or financial independence as some sort of a finish line.
Yeah.
Number one is because, like we said earlier, simply not working is not a good enough goal. This isn't something that you cross and then there's a huge celebration. And if you don't have a meaningful chapter of your life behind that finish line or behind that milestone, really, it can be very empty. But the other thing is the tendency is to sprint towards it and miss the journey,
Yeah.
miss
Yeah.
everything along the way. And then you get there and you're like, okay, I've hit every financial number that I ever wanted, but now what? I'm
Exactly.
too often, Travis, I have I meet people who are in their 60s, they're wealthy, but they traded their 30s and 40s and 50s. They traded away their health, their relationships, um, a lot of things to
Yeah,
build their wealth. Now they're 65, they're trying to spend their wealth to buy back relationships and their health, and it doesn't work. So what you said is crucial. It's about sacrifices, but it's making sacrifices intentionally. Because we all make sacrifices every day. They're either by design or by default. We need to make sure we're making sacrifices by design because the default sacrifices do not lead to a better life.
absolutely. And those, like you said, you can't ever get that time back, man. Like that's you can if you're not careful, you can get addicted to the progress. Like once you really truly understand something like the magic of compound interest, you can get too addicted to the idea that like, well, this, we could take this $2,500 and take the family on a cruise or whatever, but if we put that into the account as $2,500 compounding over 30 years, that's probably going to give us another $22,000. And it's like, okay, so like fast forward, like do you like fast forward and you're in your 60s and it's like, okay, we have 2.43 million in our retirement account instead of 2.38 million, but we missed out on the time that we could have gone to, the Bahamas, and like those memories, those pictures, those videos, those experiences that you have along the way. It's just, what are you thinking to give those things up in exchange for this future that may or may not even happen? You don't even know if we're going to be around in 30 years to reap the benefits.
You're absolutely right. And it's so here's the question I ask people on a weekly basis, sometimes daily basis. Is that decision worth dying on a bigger pile of money?
Hmm.
Like if you already
Good question.
have enough, if you're already on track for, in fact, I asked this just last week, somebody recently retired, and she was kind of explaining, like, I could do this, I could do this. Like, yes, but we've already decided you've already hit your target. So sacrificing is the wrong sacrifice. And that is the beauty of having a financial blueprint. And like you said, sometimes it takes more, sometimes it takes longer. That's why we recalibrate this financial course every single year. But when you have something finite, it allows you to pat yourself on the back a little bit and say, I've done enough for this month, for this year. I'm on track. I can live in the moment. I can serve my present self without stealing from my future self.
So along these lines, I've been talking a little bit about like making sacrifices and spending time with the family, spending time. And if you don't have kids, this would, just replace this with friendships and with relationships, regardless
Yeah.
if you decide to have kids or not have kids. The data's in terms of human happiness, the longest longitudinal study on human happiness done by Harvard and any other subsequent studies done on human happiness, they're all about relationships. It's the people in your life that are closest to you. So even if you don't have kids and don't intend on having kids, it's not just about your kids, it's about the friendships, the relationships close to you. But we're talking about making more money. That's also going to come with more sacrifice in the meantime. If you're making 60K a year and there's too much month at the end of the money and you got to go out and make some more money, that probably means you're going to have to sacrifice some time, and you're probably going to have to say no to the bar with your buddies every Friday night for a little bit of time. So you're going to have to sacrifice some time in order to be able to make more money to set yourself up in a good position. So like, how do we, it seems like conflicting advice, I guess is what I'm saying, that like we're telling you to prioritize money and to go out and make more money, but we're also telling you to prioritize family and to not make these. So how do we think about this in a way that's like, what would be your advice to somebody who's listening that's like, man, I agree, and that's been my problem so far with making more money, is that I don't want to take time away from my other friendships and relationships and family and these other things that I'm doing, because those things are really important to me. But I also know that I gotta increase how much money I'm making. What would your advice be to them?
Personally, you have to have a plan. You have to know like what are your targets. So circling back to what we've already been talking about, because there's always the potential to make more, 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 more. So coming up with some long-term financial goals and then reverse engineering that to where you are today is super important because it gives you some parameters to actually build some balance around your life. And the other part of that though is coming coming to the realization this might be a season.
Hmm.
It is in a sense, it's not going to last forever, but there might be a season in your life. Maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's 12, maybe it's 2 years where you've got to get out of debt or you got to get over this hurdle. You're paying your dues. Maybe you're in a you're working up the totem pole at your current job, or you're building a business on the side. But being really aware with, is this a season, or am I creating an imbalance that needs to be fixed at some
Yeah.
point? And giving yourself some of those victory celebrations along the way. Too often we only celebrate outcomes, we don't celebrate inputs. And the journey to financial independence is a marathon.
Mm.
We can't just celebrate the end of the race. We have to find, so it might not be a monetary celebration. If you're making 60 grand, you're $110,000 in debt, yeah, you shouldn't be taking all your buddies to dinner to
Mhm.
celebrate a milestone. But there's other ways to celebrate to keep you motivated, because this isn't about how fast can you get to the next milestone. It's, can you stay on this path for the next 20, 30 years? It's about persistence and longevity. I mean, I was just thinking about this the other day, working out on Valentine's Day at the gym. We're 6 weeks, when I was working out, 6 weeks into the new year, the gym is almost empty.
Yeah.
Like all these people from January, they're gone already.
Yep.
And they were so focused on how much progress they could make in the beginning of the year, they forget about making habits for the rest of their life. So I guess to sum this up, it's get really clear about the habits that you need to maintain for the next 20, 30 years, but also get clear about what are the sacrifices you need to make in this season that won't last forever, and give yourself some grace, but make sure that if your nose needs to be on the grindstone for the next 6 months, a year, whatever, that you're putting in the hard work now, it won't last forever.
Yeah, it's a season, not a sentence. I really like that. It was funny because I was listening to a Gary V clip the other day on social, and he's always the guy talking about it's not about the 9 to 5, it's about your 5 to 9, right? Like, what do you do from between 5 o'clock and 9 o'clock? And somebody was saying something about this exact thing. Somebody he was talking to was saying something about how they don't want to, sacrifice all the relationships and whatever for the pursuit of money and everything. And he was just like, look, just because you're committing to making more money does not mean that you have to, it's not a zero sum game. It's not if I decide to make more money, now I have to say no to my friends 100% of the time. It's not that. But you can do both. You can say no to your friends 50% of the time, 60% of the time, 80% of the time, 30% of the time, because you're doing this thing that's going to be able to generate some extra cash. It's not a zero sum game.
No, it's not at all. And I think too often we make the wrong cuts. Again, this goes back to intentional sacrifice. And you're either going to sacrifice by design or by default. Most of us, we need to say no to our phones. Forget our friends.
Yeah.
Like, let's say no to our phones. So yeah, you might have time to go out with your buddies. You might have time to talk to your spouse, all these different things. But all the top 6 shows on Netflix or Hulu. Like, no. I mean, people waste a ridiculous amount of time on some of the silliest things and then make the wrong cuts,
Yeah.
because they get to the end of their day and they don't have any margin left. Like, oh my gosh, it's 8 o'clock at night. I've got to spend 3 hours getting my presentation, or getting our new product launched or whatever. But they've already spent 4 hours on social media, or streaming shows or whatever. Like, relationships should not be the first thing that you cut. I mean,
Right.
your health should not be the first thing you cut. When I was building this business, some people like, man, you go to the gym, 5 or 6 days a week. I wish I had time to do that. I'm like, I don't have time not to.
Right.
I'm charging so hard through the day that 30 minutes or an hour or even hour and a half that I spend at the gym, it actually makes me more effective in the next 12 hours of the day. So I need that time. It sharpens me. So there's a metaphor of a guy chopping down a forest full of trees. He's so busy, he never takes time to sharpen his axe. So he's out there with a dull axe, working much, much harder than he has to.
Yeah.
We have to take that time to sharpen ourselves, which might mean sleep. It might mean working out. It certainly means relationships. Like, we need to know what helps us recharge, what sharpens our axe, so we don't need to spend as much time hacking away at these trees with a dull blade.
Yeah, being as honest, as brutally honest as you can about where your time is actually going is a really great place to start. And I love that you keep bringing it back to the health conversation, because that's one of the areas that's just such a perfect example of what life is. Health is just a long term game, and the minute that I got my health back under control, because I was an athlete all grown up. I played sports all the time. I never really had to worry about it, never thought twice about it. And then I got injured in college, got surgery, and then got married. And then I was, 21, married, trying to figure out how to make money for the first time. And my wife made a bunch of good food, didn't know how to cook for two people. I overate tremendously, never had to think about it again because I was working out all the time, playing sports and everything. And I gained like 50, 60 pounds in our first year and a half of marriage. And then from then on, it was a yo-yo thing of up and down and up and down and up and down. And I was doing that whole, 6-week challenge and 2-week challenge and 75 days this and 7 days this and 30 days that. And I would always accomplish whatever challenge was in front of me because that's like the mindset that I have is like, if I'm doing this, I'm going to do it. And I would stay disciplined. And then as soon as I was done with it, I would go back to my old habits of like like improper nutrition. Getting in the gym was never a problem, but the nutrition side was definitely a problem. And the minute that it changed for me was when I decided like this has got to be something that I think about over a longer period of time, something that I can sustain moving forward. Like instead of thinking about what does January 2025 look like and doing a 30-day challenge, it's what does January of 2026, 27, 28, 29, and 30 look like based on the decisions that I can make like over the long haul. And it's the same thing when it comes to your finances as well. It's like you have to be able to make decisions that are going to be sustainable beyond just what this month has to offer. So I love the correlation between between the health and the finances piece because it's all the same. It's all just a matter of solving for the long term rather than solving, for the short term, and then making those cuts as necessary along the way.
There's a lot of parallels, and I use them a lot because of my background in health and medicine, and but I also think the skill sets are very much the same. You don't have to be an expert in nutrition to be in good shape.
Yeah.
It isn't about knowing the difference between how the starch in a sweet potato breaks down and the starch in bread breaks down while we're shoveling our face full of Reese's. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, we sometimes place major emphasis in minor impact. We
Right.
do it in our health. We certainly do it in our money. But I also think we don't need to be an expert in investing to be a very successful investor. What it takes, again, both disciplines are the same. It takes perseverance. It takes patience. It takes grit.
Mm-hmm.
It takes being long-term focused. It takes having a plan and sticking to it. All those things are relatively simple, but very hard to do for a long period of time. So, it isn't about, hey, I need to get in shape because I'm going on this cruise in 6 weeks. It's, I need to be in shape because in 20 years, I'm going to have grandkids.
Right.
It's in 20 years, I'm going to be financially independent. I want to be able to use that. If we build our health and sacrifice our finances or sacrifice our health for our finances, you're not going to be able to enjoy the benefits of the other, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, if you're in awesome shape, but you're broke and you can't do anything, you're not going to be able to fully benefit from the health that you've built. And it isn't going to last because the
Right.
financial stress is going to gradually erode at your physical health.
Mm-hmm.
But we flip that, if you're a multimillionaire, but your health is in jeopardy, you can't enjoy the freedom that you should be able to. In fact, there's a quote, can't remember who said it, says, a healthy man has 1,000 worries, a sick man has one.
Right.
And so it doesn't matter how much money you have if you have a significant health issue. So we got to learn how to build those both together. But here's the cool thing, Travis. Both finance and health encompass so many other areas of life. They take so much discipline. It's such a commitment. And don't worry so much about the knowledge or the education. Worry about the execution.
Yeah.
Apply what you already know. But if you can start getting some momentum in those two areas of your life, your physical health, your financial health, watch to see how the discipline ripples into every other area. You will start seeing excellence in other areas of your life that weren't even a part of the plan because those two pillars are in place.
And to bring it back full circle too, the honest assessment thing was kind of where I was going with that because like when my nutrition changed, the only thing that I did differently was I didn't worry about again challenges and this thing and that thing and keto versus paleo and all these other thought experiments. It was basically just a matter of tracking every single calorie I put into my body for an entire month. That was it. Once I did that one thing, it allowed me to be completely and fully honest with myself. When I was just trying to like keep it in my head, it was like, I think I did really well for the last week. How come I'm still gaining weight? And it's like, because you didn't realize that you took a handful of fries here and you dipped those fries in ketchup, and that's extra calories there. And there, you really take a fully, brutally honest assessment about where your calorie expenditure and income, to use financial terms, is happening. Then you start realizing where the discrepancies are, and then you can decide which sacrifices you're okay with making. And for me, it was like those sacrifices are easy ones. It was easy for me to sacrifice consuming calories through beverages. It was like, okay, I'll just cut out juice. Like that's not worth it to me to drink juice when I'm having 300 calories in a cup of juice. You know what I mean? Like it's not worth it to me to have that handful of fries. It's not worth it to me to drink a soda. It's not worth it to me to do these things. I would rather spend that on a cookie. If I'm going to have the calories on something bad, I'd waste it on a cookie instead. I'd give up things that I was okay with giving up and not give up things I wasn't okay with giving up. And it gave me a sustainable thing to do long term. And it's the same thing with the finances piece we were talking about earlier. If you're honest about where your time is going, just do that for 30 days. Just every single day, take a full accounting of how you spent every hour, every minute of your day. And if you look at it over 30 days, you're probably going to realize like, wow, I spent an average of 3 hours a day on social media. You just don't realize it because you're doing 5 minutes here and 2 minutes here and 12 minutes here and 6 minutes here. But then if you really, really look at it, you might go, wow, so if I just kept my social media down to an hour, that's giving me 2 extra hours a day that I could use to generate more income without sacrificing my relationships or whatever it is. But you got to start with an honest assessment about where your time is going, where your money is going, where your health habits are going, before you can build a plan that's going to put you in a better position in the future. But yeah, Chad, I love this conversation. I wish we'd keep chatting. I know we got to get you to your next meeting, and I got a couple things coming up too. So let's move into the last segment here. Just a couple quick random questions, quick random answers. You ready?
Let's go.
What profession other than your own do you think that it would be fun to master?
Well, medicine would be an easy one, because I already was pursuing that, but coaching. I still enjoy coaching athletes, and a lot of what I do right now is coaching. I'm coaching wealth. It's like personal training for money essentially. So I really enjoy the competitive aspect of that.
If you could sit on a park bench with someone past or present and chat for an hour, who would it be?
I would have to say, right now, I would want to sit with Abraham Lincoln
Uh,
and
oh,
go ahead.
sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was say sit with Abraham Lincoln and just talk about what he went through trying to keep a country together that was busting at the seams. Um, and how to what it looked like to try to get in America back together again and not worry about everything that divides us, but focus on everything that connects us.
As we get everything wrapped up here, Chad, where can people go to get more from you?
VeritasAlaska.com. That's our website. And don't let the Alaska fool you. We've got folks all over the United States. And then Veritas.Alaska on Instagram.
Veritas.Alaska on Instagram or veritasalaska.com. Go check out some of the stuff that Chad's putting out. If you are interested in improving your finances, which you are by listening to this show, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Chad, thank you so much for doing this. Everybody else, remember, money solves your money problems, and then it makes it a little bit easier to solve the other problems if you have some money in the bank. So let's solve that one first. Here on the Travis Makes Money podcast. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next time. Peace out.